to the Alibaba webinar content series. I'm Daniel. I'm from Alibaba's North America account management team, and I'm joined by Christina and Alex from Better Life Ventures. You may recognize them from one of our previous webinars. They're here for part 2 today. So I just wanted to do a little housekeeping before we got started. This webinar will be recorded and posted to Alibaba's Seller Success Hub and our official YouTube channel, which we will post in the chat or send to you afterwards. If you have any questions, you can see at the bottom of your window that there's a toolbar that allows you to jump into our chat, raise your hand, or post questions. There will be a period for Q&A at the end of the webinar, but feel free to post questions while the presentation is happening and we can get to them or keep them in the back of our mind here for the end of the session. So I don't want to delay it too much further. Alex, Christina, I will turn the mic over to you guys and let's get started with part 2.
Great. Thank you so much, Daniel. Alex and I are excited to be partnering with you again on this webinar series. Today, we're going to talk about what is probably top of mind for many of your suppliers on the platform, and that is how to get more buyers, more buyer inquiries, ultimately sales, but not just about the quantity of buyers, but also how to determine a high quality buyer from a low quality buyer and where you should really focus your time. Before we jump in, just want to give you a little background on who we are. So Alex and I are from the CPG industry, consumer packaged goods, and we have over 40 years of combined experience in this marketing analytics space. And a few years back, we decided to start our own brand in the CBD space, but we actually started as a DTC brand and focused more on pure play sales through like Amazon or our own website. But we got into the data, that's kind of our passion and our background, and we saw this opportunity within Alibaba for wholesale, and this was right about the time they opened their doors to American suppliers on the platform. So we took that initial kind of leap of faith and dabbled a little bit in wholesale and quickly decided this was the way to go, and we pivoted our entire business model to compete as global wholesalers exclusively. And we really haven't looked back since. We've quickly grown to become a preferred supplier of Alibaba, top US supplier, and top 3 for plant extracts on Alibaba. So for us right now, we really want to continue that momentum and take what we've learned in the CBD space and expand it to other businesses and categories. So we've built this playbook of the IP that we've developed and all the test and learns, et cetera, to really share with others. And we have a business built around it, which we'll share the contact details at the end should you want to reach out and learn more. So that said, we can jump right into the topic at hand.
Great. So one of the ways in terms of how we approach this new opportunity with Alibaba and winning on this global marketplace is looking at it based on the digital marketing and how do you win on this platform from a digital marketing perspective, and also global wholesale kind of principles, if you will, right? What are those practices that can get and unlock value when you start selling across markets and in wholesale channels? So a lot of what we'll talk today is really focused around the digital marketing. While there is some aspects of global wholesale, like pricing, we may kind of touch upon. Most of what we do in terms of getting in a high qualified inquiry is related to how much energy and what are the right kind of best practices to drive through digital marketing. So with that, we'll jump right in.
Great. So this might look familiar to some. This is the Alibaba sales funnel, if you will. And the first step in really increasing the sales is to really understand the journey that our buyers are going through on the Alibaba platform. We can't necessarily get more orders if we don't understand how they get to that order, right? It all starts with the impressions, right? How we show up, making sure that we show up so that they can find our products. And then from there, giving them the opportunity to really engage with our products through those clicks. And we'll talk more about that and why the marketing part of building your business through your storefront and your products is so imperative in the process. And then ultimately, once you get those inquiries, how to really size them and understand who's high value, where to spend your time, and really attract the high value into that sales funnel. If you think, an average conversion rate based off of the total impressions you're getting is somewhere around 1% to 2%, which is actually high for the industry. What that means is if you're getting 100 inquiries a month, probably only one of those is going to convert into an order. So ultimately, if you're looking to get more orders and more conversions on the platform, you have to build that funnel. So you need more going in, and the more you have going in, the more likelihood you're also getting more of those high value buyers that are also, going to be less prevalent or harder to find. So it's really important that you get more exposure and increase the size of that funnel. And we're going to talk through some ways to do that.
That's right. So we'll jump in and talk about first, how do you increase the number of inquiries coming through that funnel, right? So the first way is the initial impressions. Let's jump right in. So, there's really three main ways to do this, right? One is ultimately winning through the algorithm that drives the KPIs, right? The 5 stars. With that, naturally, that bumps your entire portfolio, right? All your products. And it's almost a circular path where that also means you're doing a lot of right things, right? So look at that rating as being very much tied to how much volume you can get in terms of impressions and buyers. The other way that's very important and very closely related to star ratings is making sure you invest behind these showcase and keyword campaigns, right? So your paid media is very important. That is where you're going to get your largest scale and reach, right? So if you're talking about increasing more buyers and more impressions in the top of the funnel, this is a great way to do it. And then third, this is more of a principle. When we say increase high in the funnel, we're talking about increasing to a point where that you can kind of manage. Right, so building more products is great. That is the way to do it. But we recommend building more products that you can optimize and maintain ongoing. Right, and this is a chart that's produced from Alibaba to show you the correlation there, where it's all about building those high quality products, not just any product. Right, so building high quality products disproportionately gets you a lot more impressions in quality inquiries than your average products. So those are kind of 3 things right now that you can do to just kind of get more inquiries down that funnel. And go to the next step. All right, driving quality and quantity of buyers through the digital marketing. All right, like we mentioned, if you think about that, looking at the yellow, this is really what happens in terms of the journey. You have to build quality product pages to drive the algorithm, which then drives more quality customer inquiries, right? That is ultimately the funnel. So that's very important. And without that, that's the quality product pages. It's really hard to rank and show up in front of any kind of high value buyers. So this is what's going to get you quality buyers, right? It's building quality pages, right? So down below where you see the gray, those are kind of the 3 principles that we believe that you can implement today to make sure that you have the highest quality and pristine quality pages to actually attract the high value buyers, right? So one is making the pages actually artistic and investing behind the creatives and the content. Right, not just throwing anything there, but rather, getting professional photography, making sure you have enough quality photos to produce in the carousel. All those things are very important because high quality buyers look for that, right? So if you don't have those, you likely right off the bat will just not be attracted to those buyers. The second thing is when we talked about, your search strategy, your top keywords. Well, it's important to make sure you research those. They could be different ones than you assume. Frankly, this is a global marketplace. Somebody in France could be typing your product a lot differently than you assume in America, right? So you really do need to do that due diligence and making sure you really capture all the keywords in what you are designing your category around, right? So that is a great way to then invest more behind those limited keywords to get those quality buyers, because the more you invest per keyword, you're gonna get more quality buyers. And the third thing, which is really important and not talked about too much, which is really making sure you build that detail and transparency in your product pages. Your high quality buyers are usually wholesalers. They want to know that detail, all that background about the company, your capabilities, how big your factories are, if that's the case. So the more you can fill in that transparency, the better engagement. So then your click-through rate goes up. So that means you'll have more quality buyers at the lower part of the funnel. So ultimately what this slide does is just kind of point to tips that you can help kind of improve the quality product pages, and that in itself will generate kind of the marketing behind the quality buyers, right? Because they look for these things. So anyway, those are the 2 things I talked about. Now I'll pass it over to Christina.
Great. Third step here is really about vetting buyer inquiries. So as you build on the platform and get more and more quantity of inquiries, you might want to understand who's going to be high value and who's going to be lower value and where you should spend your time. So a couple ways to do that and to vet those that are coming in, because we know they're not all created equally, is to review that information that is right there on the customer card. So you don't need to look any further than Alibaba itself to find some really great information on who these buyers are. So first place is that contact card. And here you can see some information is filled out in this example and some isn't. But if there's a company website, that obviously shows some credibility, right? How long have they been on the platform? Do they provide any other contact information? Because not all buyers go into Alibaba consistently. So if there's another way to follow up with them, send any catalog or media or certifications to them. We always say do it on the platform, but also do it off the platform if there's some contact information there as well. Where are they located? Are they in a saturated market? Are they in a market where the customs regulations are favorable to your product, etc.? So this page, although it's pretty basic details, can give you a lot of insight into who this buyer is, right? And if they have that established business, what kind of business they are, what are the different products they sell, etc. That can also make you strengthen your proposition when you talk to them. So there's a lot of good cues you can get from that. The second piece there is really the activity in the last 90 days. So here you can see this person is probably newer on the platform that I took this example from. But in general, there's some red flags here that you might want to stay away from, in terms of the number of disputes or if they've been blacklisted, etc. But some good things are how active are they on the platform? So you can see, how many product views, if they've had lots of transactions going through the platform already, system inquiries. So are they reaching out to a lot of people? That shows, a very interested buyer, right? That they're looking to make a purchase. They're reaching out actively on the platform, etc. So this might be someone, if there's more competition there or they're doing a lot of transactions, that you really need to show the right attention to so you can convert them within your funnel. And then on the right there, you have the order profitability. So this is a score that Alibaba actually assigns, and it's really based on buyers who've been on the platform for 6+ months and their contact information, their browsing history, click history, and any message relevancy that they pull forward. So obviously, this is more about the propensity of the buyer to buy, and it's more so an average and based off a lot of things. But it still can be a good indicator where you see a high probability to, obviously, that's a good indicator that they might be ready to buy or, a high quality buyer on the platform. But we want to caveat this all to say, while these are all good indicators, you can still get someone on the platform that has no contact information or website set up, maybe is showing a lower probability and hasn't really transacted much on the platform. They could still be high value. So it's very important to respond to all inquiries. Obviously, if it's spam, you mark it as spam and move on. If someone's trying to sell you something, etc., don't spend your time there. But for all other inquiries, at least that basic response, we know that impacts your response time, a metric in the star rankings. So you obviously want to respond to all, but it's about how you respond, how much time you dedicate, right? And once you start to interact with them, you can better understand things about their business as a first indicator from some of these mediums. And step 4 is really about not just waiting for those high value buyers to come to you, but really seeking them out. So there are ways that you can proactively target, and then once you find them, prioritize high value buyers within your sales pipeline. So the first step is really sizing the opportunity. You can look for that high category interest in markets where you know it exists, or potentially markets where there may be lower supplier penetration. So it's a less crowded market. You have more ability to stand out. Obviously, you can do this through your keyword advertising campaigns and really double down on those markets. So you're pulling in those high quality, more likely to pull in those high quality buyers from those areas. And then you can also look at, as the inquiries come into you, are they coming from a market that you know is a high value market? And again, that could be someplace where you want to spend more of your time. We know time is money. We talked about this in our last series, right? High value buyers are very likely to be active, not only with you, but with contacting multiple suppliers. You know, they don't have a lot of time to waste. They're looking to probably place a high order. So they are looking to understand who's the most competitive in this space, who has the best value proposition, etc. So it is likely that because they're active on the platform in that manner, that they are also reaching out to others. So it is very important when you know it's a high quality buyer or you think it might be a high quality buyer to make sure you're responsive, you're giving them timely information, and you're answering the questions that they have so that you can move them through that funnel. And they want to know that there's a supplier on the other side that is also high quality, right? They're looking at those things for you, like Alex mentioned, like your company profile, do you have all the product information there, etc. So it goes back and forth. And then finally, once you determine the high value, someone is high value or might be, you need to ensure that you are staffed accordingly to meet those buyers' needs. So really deprioritizing those maybe low value buyers, or consider using more templated response for those low value buyers, but really focusing on where the high value is coming from. So that could be, again, understanding those markets where high value is more likely to come from and staffing accordingly to meet those time zones. So making sure you're available when those buyers are going to be on the platform and most likely to contact you, looking through the history of your inquiries, when they're coming in, when they're most likely to come in from high values, etc. So you just want to dedicate your time and energy around those, even back to like how you're investing in those keywords that Alex talked about. What are those keywords that are ranking high in those markets, and ensuring that you're doubling down on those keywords and as part of your campaigns. So this is really important. I don't know, Alex, if you wanted to add anything here.
No, I mean, you said it all. I think it's just really important to seek them out. And along these lines, don't forget, like, building your product pages is another way to seek them out, right? Just the way, Christina had showed, the way we look at, the higher quality buyers based on their contact information that they submit, they're doing the same thing. So ensuring that what you have is something that you would buy from versus other markets or other suppliers. So please do your homework. Also making sure that proposition that you have is attracted to those high value buyers, because more than likely, a lot of times they may move on if that maybe you're not as competitive in price or in shipping. So it's really important to make sure that proposition that you have is very, very good and competitive versus the category.
Yeah, and one more thing I'll add here is try to seek feedback. If someone was reaching out to you and seemed like high value and they went in another direction, ask them why. Say, what could I have done to gain your business? Because that can also be very telling, and that's good insight to have and can help you maybe unlock that value proposition that they're not getting from you for some reason, or maybe it's just not coming through in how you communicate it. So always seek that feedback. A lot of buyers will offer it to you, and be honest about it. So I think that's the end of our content, but we'd love to hear any questions that you might have for us.
Yep, chat. So just like mentioned in the beginning, the bottom toolbar on your window should have the ability for Q&A or comments to come in. We have plenty of time to answer your questions and unlock some of the secrets you wish to know. I'll start, Ben. Alex, Christina, that was a really great presentation on buyers and everything that goes into making a quality buyer or a good experience for a quality buyer. What's your, maybe you can tell us a quick anecdote about an experience you had with a buyer on Alibaba.com. I would be curious to know maybe your highlight of anybody really that you did business with through Alibaba.
I think the biggest thing is what Christina mentioned, is understanding what drives the purchase for them. For some, we've had experiences where, there's folks in high value wholesalers that will make a purchase here and now if you have the right proposition, so your price, quality, and shipping. And there's some that take a very long time. Ultimately, we all seek the ones that will come through fast, but it's important to understand, for them, is it more price, right? Is it more shipping? And what we came to find is, it's interesting that with the global buyers, it's all of them. It depends on their market, drives a lot of it. But really understanding what drives it for them in that market and your product is very important. You'll unlock a lot more inquiries and sales if you are priced right versus your competitive set. If you're comparing your product pages to your competitive set are the two best ways to dictate, understand what is your potential in Alibaba. But what I'll say is all the experience, Daniel, is at the beginning that we would have thought, or is it the platform, right? Are we not getting the right buyers because it is a low value? What we'll say is the traffic is very large, right? This is the only platform that you can really do global wholesale trading. So you can imagine the 700 million plus registered buyers. It's no shortage of actual high value, right? So they're there. The high value is there. It's just very competitive, right? It's a platform, that's new to USA. So it is up to us to kind of figure out and build that shop. And these are just some ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Good answer.
And just anecdotally, one of our most consistent buyers came through on a sample order and didn't have an established website or any of that information that we just said is so valuable to have. So, we didn't discount him. We engaged with him. We did a sample order and then it built from there. So you never know where a high value buyer is going to come from. There are good indicators. But again, you don't want to turn off somebody who doesn't have those indicators right from the start. They can also grow into a high value buyer.
Great answer, Christina. I love to hear that. And, I've heard stories like that as well in my experience talking to sellers. So the opportunity is totally out there, no matter who the person identifies as in the beginning. So a couple of questions coming in here. We have a question from an anonymous attendee. Do you suggest to entertain buyers who are looking for smaller quantities compared to larger quantities for products if you list them with high MOQs? So I guess like a simplified version of this question is if someone is coming to you as a seller and asking for less than the MOQ than you ask for, how do you deal with this?
Sure. So I can start and Alex can jump in. This is really up to you, right? I think this is a way to differentiate yourself on the platform because many will shy away from those high MOQs, especially if it's a first order from them or a sample order. This is a way that we've chosen to differentiate from many of our competitors on the platform by lowering those initial order hurdles. There's always ways around this. Obviously you still want to make a profit. So even if you have to raise the price in order to satisfy that lower MOQ, many buyers are willing to pay that just so that they don't have to have, that massive quantity at first, especially if you're new to them as a first time purchase or maybe a new product that they're not as familiar with. They don't want, you're kind of de-risking that purchase for them by lowering that as a hurdle to buy. So we would definitely suggest it if you're able to. And again, it is a good way that's a value proposition, right? To get them in on that initial purchase and then build the business from there.
Yeah, exactly. And what I would say in addition is sampling program is very important. Very important. I mean, if you can imagine, would you buy something that's $3,000 or $10,000 without getting some samples, right? So, the math is the lower the MOQ, the higher the orders. However, you'll get some lower quality orders in there. So it's a question of how much you can operationally, sell at lower quantities. You obviously need to still run a business and needs to pay the bills, but just know that you should try to make a robust sampling program to encourage to get that in people's hands because that drives a lot of the consideration in the purchase.
Good to know. Follow-up question here. From the chat, another anonymous question. What's the split of your buyers on Alibaba, new versus experienced? And does this have to factor in any of the targeting that you mentioned? How can I find a high value market, or are there any tools that I can leverage on the site to do this?
There are absolutely tools you can leverage on the platform, right? Again, you can go back to those high value buyers and understand what markets they came from and then use the targeting tools to promote keywords in those markets. You can also look through, like we said, the buyer profiles to understand some of those indicators of being high value. For us, new versus established buyers, it actually in our category, and this is probably going to be different for all categories because our category is still very new to many markets. There are a lot of new buyers on the platform or just kind of starting out and building their business. So it probably does lean a little more towards the newer buyer in our category. But again, it depends on, the characteristics of your category. Is it an established category? Has it been around for a while? Is it very saturated? Then you'll probably get buyers who have more experience in that than new.
And one really easy way to tell as well is if you go to the dashboard and you go to the analytics kind of, left-hand side, there's a view under there that does have like a map of the world. It shows countries with a table, which shows you click-through rates, right? So it will show you of all the markets where you have for every, 1,000 impressions, the ones that are ranking higher in terms of click-through rates are the ones that have more affinity to your products. So that's one easy way just to kind of start seeing, hey, France may not be the third largest country in the world, but they're the third largest people who click on my products, right? Is one kind of way to look at that.
Interesting. Well, there's a follow-up question to this one as well, which is a good one. Basically, the question comes in the format of the statement and question. So it asks, in simple form, what do you do with buyers who are sending a message but then not replying to my reply? I feel like I have a lot of customers who are like this.
That don't reply for a lot of time. Yeah. So as I mentioned before, some buyers go onto the platform and then they don't necessarily log back in every day, or they are sending a lot of those inquiries, so they don't go back to those messages they sent, which is why it's really important whenever you can to follow up offline as well. So if they have their email, if they have their phone number, you can send them a message through WhatsApp or any other medium, or email them, follow up with your catalog, etc. And then even after a week or two goes by, it's not being a nuisance. They may just have other things going on. They forgot to check. So, pinging them again and saying, hey, maybe you have a different offer in the next month. Like we always say, go back to those inquiries. They are still a pretty warm lead. It's someone who reached out to you to buy a product. They may not have that time, but that doesn't mean in a month from now, in a couple of weeks, in a couple of months, they may not have that opportunity again to buy. So it's really important to kind of keep them within your own CRM, if you will, or build your own list of who those potential customers are, to go back to them when you have new news, when you have a promotion, or you're just touching base, because you haven't heard from them and you want to keep them updated on what your offering is.
Yeah, absolutely. And, half the time it's probably that, right? Which is they're not on it every day and they require high touch. Email, absolutely very effective. The other half of the time, you might have not won out on the consideration. Right, they reached out to maybe 8 to 12 other suppliers. Check your proposition, right? That's very important. And when they don't reply, it's also another thing to watch out for is when did you send your reply, right? The new metric in terms of under 5 minutes is because most buyers will consider and engage later with you if you respond within that first 5 minutes. And you can imagine that's a curve, right? So 1 minute is probably 10 times more likely to engage you than the 5 minutes, right? So ultimately, you want to do the one-on-ones of Alibaba, which is respond really quickly, high value response, right? And then you just want to be able to engage them along the journey, right? So it's very important to look at that proposition and also do the work offline, like Christina mentioned, like sending the emails where they may not have been on the Alibaba for your responses.
Mm-hmm.
All good suggestions there. Getting those extra touch points is absolutely vital to winning leads on this platform, or winning them over, I should say. So all good tidbits of advice there. Another question's come in. I'm a first-time international seller, and I struggle with getting inquiries late in the evening while I'm not on Alibaba, and then I miss the time in between. What do you recommend that I do to try and work on these things going forward as I deal with your markets?
Sure. So by missing, I'm guessing what they're saying is they're not available to answer those inquiries, when they're sleeping, and totally valid. Everybody needs sleep, right? But I think this is really important to go back to those analytics and understand when a lot of those inquiries are coming in. And if it is in those off hours, this is a way that, this is why we built a whole sales center around this, because we knew we couldn't service the whole world 24 hours because Alibaba is, 24/7, always on, never sleeps. There's always going to be a buyer somewhere that's reaching out. And if it is critical to your business and you're seeing a lot of those high value buyers come from another time zone when you're not normally in working hours, it's really important to staff that, honestly, and to have the resources there to support it. And that's something that Better Life Ventures does offer a solution for. If you're not able to do that, though, you know, the best thing to do would to be use those generic responses, you know, the automated responses, at least to have a first capture to let them know this is not working hours, you'll be back in touch, or give them some initial information just so that it doesn't go unanswered that entire time. But then first thing in the morning, you should be, or first thing at your start of your day, you should be following up promptly with all those inquiries and not letting it go beyond that.
Good follow-up to this as well is your service provider for Alibaba, if you work with iTech or Trademore, also offers a similar service to do full account management, which includes responding to your inquiries and keeping your star rating high. That can be another resource for sellers on Alibaba to have those types of questions or those types of inquiries serviced in a timely manner. Another question here in the chat. What would you suggest? Would you rather chat with suppliers on or buyers on Alibaba.com or take them off the platform?
Off the platform, 100%. You know, as we mentioned, there are quirks in the platform. You know, we obviously want to move it to a more engaging conversation, which sometimes is hard to do, like sharing the media, obviously building that connection. It just makes it more personal. And then obviously the ultimate thing is to have that chat function with them or have a live call with them, see them face to face on video. Especially if they're high value, they need to know who they're buying from and build trust in you and establish that credibility. So we would always say move it off the platform once you establish that initial rapport.
Awesome. Follow-up to this is you mentioned some great tips to responding to the first inquiry that a buyer sends. Maybe like what's one thing that someone maybe doesn't think of to respond with in the first message that can help get that second message and build that rapport right off the bat?
I think it's, you know, some of those claims that are going to different, like, what is your value proposition? Why should they read your email or continue to engage with you? That's really important. So we try to state that very upfront, what makes us different from our competitors. So providing some of that credibility. And then pricing. Pricing is important. And some buyers are very specific in their inquiries that they're looking for this specific product and this specific quantity. But then you write back a more general response that doesn't answer their question. So now they have to invest more time and go back and say, hey, this is what I was asking you, right? Where another seller can provide all the information in that first email and close the sale right there. So it's really important to read those specifics. What is the buyer asking you for? Some do just send a more general, like, I want to know about your products, and that's where you need to engage them more and understand. But also providing your product catalog could be a good solution there. But many of them will inquire about a specific product and even put in the quantity. So it's really important to follow that up with the pricing.
Totally agree. Pricing is absolutely pricing. You know, creative art content is really the first line of what someone is going to see. And once they've gone ahead and clicked on that and they want to see that this matches up, if you have a high quality posting, we should give them a high quality response, something unique, something that makes them spend the time to want to chat with you. Totally agree, Christina.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised how many times people don't read the actual, like Christina mentioned, the end is very important. When they write out the quantity, for instance, that's a piece of information you should use. So anything you can customize at the end of the day is going to show more value, right, in your message. Anything. So even if it's the type of product they choose, you may have 20 variations of one product. They chose that one specific one. So what about that keyword that you sent in there that you can use in terms of your response? But it's got to be succinct at the end of the day, right? Because if they didn't read it initially, likely nobody wants to read long paragraphs. We see that quite often as well. Succinct, top claims right up top will differentiate, and maybe follow up with some kind of deal with your second kind of communication, right? Can you do free shipping or something like that?
Good call out. I think that's an important distinction Alex made there. People want it short, concise. They want to see the value. They want to feel that, feel supported, but also feel like not, it's not overbearing to go through this or a chore. So good call out as well. We have a follow-up question here. You mentioned a lot about strategies. How many inquiries did it take for you to get your first sale?
It was pretty quick. Within the first month, we did get a sale. So, probably 150, something like that. Like there was probably 100 inquiries or so the first month as we were building. So we did get a sale from that.
Yeah,
They're there. They're
yeah,
there.
they're there. That's the first questions people always ask, right? Is it the platform? Just like I said, from it just couldn't be logically. It's just such a big marketplace, right? Think about if you want to cut through the competition, it is something that you as a supplier, there are things that you can control, and ultimately it's about your investment in time and energy, and actual structure around supporting the platform, right? The example earlier of is a great one around what do you do if most of the buyers are inquiring in the middle of the night when you're not awake? So that's a great example. Is one end of the spectrum is hiring someone, right? You're going to get a higher ROI, right? I mean, if you hire somebody to answer during those times, you will have a lot more sales. If you have the chat automated bot, you will have at least some responses, but mathematically it will be much lower. So it just depends on how much you want to invest. And the more you invest in the platform, the more you will unlock some of these values.
Awesome. And Catherine asked in the chat, is trade assurance important to have? Is that something you guys have on your account, or that's trade assurance? Is it important?
We would say it is in most categories because it's also enables you to have ready to ship products, which is something many buyers on the platform are looking for that. So 100% if it's available in your category. It's actually not available in our category that we compete in. So for us, while we would love to use it, you're just as able to make those transactions off the platform. But if it is enabled in your category, we would 100% support and be supportive of that being activated on your account.
Yeah, and we find it's very important to USA buyers, right? A lot of them do ask for that specifically. And you'll get basically the buyer, by having trade assurance, you'll have the buyers that will just make the purchase without any inquiry. Mm-hmm. Right? So that can only happen under trade assurance, right? So that's an important distinction.
Yeah, totally agree with everything that was said. Trade assurance, and the main thing I think we want to highlight here is that you can apply for this freely on your account. It's no additional anything to put trade assurance on, and it gives you that much more value by filling out a 5 to 10 minute application to enable the service. Ready to ship products do have a higher rate of being clicked on and hit on. So I think the advice is sound there. Trade assurance, Catherine, it's a good thing to have. And if you haven't signed up for it already, we can help you with that after the game. All right, so we have still have some time for questions. Don't see anything just yet. Here's a question that's just come in here. Alice and Christina, you mentioned that you guys are staffed to answer inquiries. The seller has a small team. If we don't know, if our staff is capable of answering all these questions, I suppose, what's a recommendation to have these inquiries be sorted, or how can a small team manage this when sellers are receiving inquiries?
Yeah. So again, you can break it up into those shifts so that you have one person on and you're not having multiple people on at the same time. That can obviously help divide up the day and use all your resources effectively. So they're not all, as it's even when you're on the platform, you're not getting inquiries every minute of every day. So they come in more sporadically. So you may not need multiple people serving that need at the same time. It's better to space them out throughout the day more strategically, so you always have someone available. That's definitely the first step if you have those resources available to you.
Yeah, and pay attention to when they're coming in, right? Do that analytics. It's right in the communication kind of part of the dashboard. You can download the Excel report, and it basically lists for every single inquiry a timestamp and the market they can't come from, right? So you can just see, are there prime markets you want to focus on? Is it, Japan, China? You'd want to have someone covering that time shift. So between that or hiring some kind of, part-time person or consultancy service is the way to kind of invest behind it. And it will have, conversion, right? Because you're doing the check the box in terms of engaging with the buyers.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Here's a question in the chat from Ennis. How do you deal with payment outside of the platform? And how do you deal with really everything that comes with that? So yeah, payment outside the platform. How do you guys work with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to most other kind of small businesses. You can use Square Up. You can have bank transfers, right? All the kind of standard way. If you were to open a small business anywhere in the US, you'd use basically the exact same kind of process, right? So we find those online ones pretty easy to use and easy to start with, like Square Up. And certainly like for larger orders, usually big buyers will probably want to go direct bank transfers, right? For things that are multiple thousands of dollars, you'll want to have some kind of direct banking relationship.
And just be really clear with buyers on, what your return policy is up front. So even if you're transacting off the platform, they feel secure and you have that transparency up front around, orders, order fulfillment, time for shipping, etc.
Awesome. Good question from the crowd there. Thank you, Ennis. Anything else from the chat? We still have a few minutes for questions. Give it a minute or two more. All right, looks like that might be it for now. So I want to thank everyone for joining. Another great webinar for part of our series here. Alex, Christina, thank you so much for joining us. Again, two of my favorite people to work with on the Alibaba side of things. So much appreciated as always. You can find Alex and Christina's contact information at the bottom of the window here. And this will be posted on Alibaba's Seller Success Hub and YouTube following the conclusion of this webinar. So thank you guys, much appreciated.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. Thank you for your time.
Take care.
Everybody.